how your talk will be a continuation of our morning session. Of course, it was filled with music, songs as well. And now I hope you read us a few lines from your work as you discussed.
You want me to read a few lines from Ahalya?
Yes,
if you're okay with it?
If you're okay with it, of course.
Yeah, actually, I myself have never read it once it got published. So I don't.
Oh.
I never do it, because that is when you just read through and you feel that I should have written this better, I should have written this differently, and so you sulk.
You know,
so I try not to do that.
Koral, don't get me wrong, or don't kill me, but you sound like our students. They are like, exam to de diya, maine paper वापस नहीं पढ़ा. You know, like Ram ka band, chala gaya to chala gaya, ab nahi padhna वापस.
Preeti, I do have this. I mean, my editors know and they laugh at me that when I submit my manuscripts, I'm on an all-time high, that it is absolutely fine. And as time progresses, my confidence is coming down. A few days before the release of the book, I tell them that, would you like to take a few more time? You know, I should, I think, relook into the entire thing. And, you know, so they're like, Madam, shant ho jaiye abhi. Okay.
So everybody has this, right? Even published authors. So our students, they do this. Last minute, Pehle to they are always confident. They are great, and I must tell you, they are lovely. They are very talented. But then, you know, during when the semester is on, they are all confident, and before the exams, ma'am, should we, you know, revise something, you know, we did in the 6 months back, maybe. So. But you all should know that this happens to everyone.
Yeah.
And I see a wonderful bookshelf behind you.
Yeah, those are our lifelines. Both me and my husband, we both are authors.
Oh, lovely. We haven't met him. I would argue.
Yeah, he writes political fiction,
well,
and I write more of art.
Oh, what a combo! What a combination!
There's nothing in common between what I write, what he writes, what he does, what I do. It's a complete.
You don't have fights. I write better than you, and like those Abhiman moments of Amitabh and Jaya kinds that I'm better.
I would have loved to have such a situation, but then he writes completely different stuff. Politics is something that I don't understand. I mean, I can't save my life there if I am asked a question on that.
Being a true Gujarati, Koral, in my head, I'm like, we need to connect with Koral and get a husband as well for a talk soon. Ek patthar, do bird, you know, I'm like, let's, because we also deal with international relations, and, you know, so it'd be wonderful, you know, Suchandra, yeah, note to self, we should also.
And you know, we should invite both of you together someday and see Abhiman moment.
But I think, Suchandra, we're good to go. I'm just constantly keeping the announcement on in the groups, but I think Vivek, Suchandra,
Okay, sure. So yeah, we have already started our chit chat with you, but we have a formal welcome address for you, and Vivek will do the.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank Ira for being such a wonderful coordinator. Greetings to my respected professors, to my beloved friends, and all the lovely attendees today. It was such a splendid show with Ushaji. It was so inspiring and so lively and so entertaining at the same time. It was a plethora of emotions and learning. And that is what out of syllabus is all about. So I would like to thank our idolized and dear Preeti ma'am, who was as magnificent as she is always. Now, that session was around music, and this session is around literature. So why not talk about words? Words. When words come to life, chasing fiction, after being conceived and nourished in a writer's imagination, they emerge as reality. Isn't it beautifully exhilarating that how our emotions, no matter abstract or real, find a beacon of light in words, guiding their way towards reality? For those who don't know what beacon is a lighthouse which guides your way in the darkness. So writers are such beacons of light for us, guiding our way through fiction and reality. One such beacon of light is our today's guest. Known for a great sense of humor, a very beautiful and talented Miss Koral Dasgupta. Her books, her stories explore the innate nature of complex minds. Koral ma'am has published 5 books ranging from comedy to classic. Her fourth book, a comedy, which is called Summer Holidays, has been optioned for a screen adaptation. Her fifth book, Ahalya, is also the first of a 5-part Sati series coming up from Pan Macmillan Publishers. She is a literary entrepreneur, discovering new stories through her story laboratory, which is called Tell Me Your Story. Her work is recognized in the list of Innovator 25 Asia Pacific 2019, prepared by the Holmes Report, which is a New York-based PR news agency. Now, it needs an erudite and a scholarly person against another erudite and scholarly person. And I am not that person, definitely. So to host an erudite personality like Miss Koral Dasgupta, I'm going to assist a very well-informed and scholarly Miss Suchandra ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vivek, for a lovely introduction of our guest for today, and thank for introducing me as well. As Vivek has already mentioned, Koral ma'am today will be talking on her book, her recent book, Ahalya. I will mention it again. This is a part of her an elaborate project on Sati. I won't take more time from this session. I'll give it over to her. The session is being presented by Pan Macmillan Books. And yes, so over to you, Koral. I think we can go for, of course, stay here. I'm sure you all will have many questions. Even me and Vivek, both of us have questions for her. But before that, let's go straight into your talk.
Thank you so much, Suchandra, and thank you, Vivek. I can see a few more faces, and thank you so much for joining. I will start the discussion, and I'll call it a discussion. I hate monologues. I hated it as a student, and I still hate it. So feel free to interact with me in between or after, and spare me the arrogance of offering a monologue. Today's discussion, as I had conceptualized, this talks about our very own, the very primitive identity, which is ideally recognized as a religion, which is Hindu. And I'll be talking about culturally Hindu or politically Hindu. What is the identity of the community? And I will talk about this topic with reference to the feminine legends of Indian mythology. Of course, with reference to my recent work, which is the Sati series. Let me very briefly introduce the Sati series. This is about Panchkanya of Indian mythology. The reason why we jumped into this particular topic is that ancient scholars have translated Panchkanya as 5 virgins. And this is not a translation that I or any other contemporary author has done. This is done by very, very learned scholars from different parts of the world. And that is where it came to our mind, or my mind basically, that how can we call them virgins? How do we call a Draupadi or a Kunti a virgin? Ahalya, Mandodri and Tara, probably we knew less, but then why are the other 3 or the other 2 specifically, Kunti and Draupadi, how do we call them virgin? How do we appreciate them as virgin? And that is where a Pandora's opened. And the more I read, the more I researched, the more I tried to figure out what this is about, I got to understand that Hindu philosophy is vast and very deep, and it puts very less relevance to the construct of the body. The Hindu philosophy is all about the mind, it is all about the soul. It has nothing to do with the body. It is not even considering any particular soul under the structure of a body. And that is where this entire sati, the word sati comes in. It says that the person who is capable of not being touched and remaining true to her goals or whatever she feels is right is the sati, is the righteous one. And the fact that her mind has not been touched by the cultural, political, or any other kind of influence that operates around her is what makes her untouched. Untouched not in the context of the body, but in the context of the soul, in the context of the mind. And that is where she elevates to the level of sati. So when I look at this word called Hinduism from this particular lens, there's one particular question that comes to me, and I figured that this is the question of many intellectuals across every generation. And that particular question is, who am I? Where do I come from? These are some very basic questions that intellectuals across generations have tried to figure out, and they have tried to research, they have tried to find an answer to. And in the process of finding that answer, they may have written fiction or non-fiction, but they kept going back to their history. They kept going back to time. They kept researching the different bygone eras to understand where have we reached and why have we reached here, and given these situational circumstances, who am I? Now, when you keep going back to time, there is no end of time. Till the time things are documented, it is called history. When the time goes beyond documentation, it becomes mythology. So you go back to time, there is a date of history that is specified for you. And there is also a time when probably you don't have a specific date. You can assume those. But when you enter mythology, the interesting bit about mythology is that though it is timeless, or though it doesn't have a specific date, and you can only research and you can only put some bit of assumption in terms of defining that time, such work of literature is timeless. It is applicable across generations. It never goes obsolete. And that is the reason it is not called history, it is called mythology. Now, as we go back, what I see is that Indian mythology, or if we want to call them Hindu philosophical texts, these Hindu philosophical scriptures or Hindu philosophical texts has given us a truckload of stories. Ramayana and Mahabharata, they are huge loads of stories. You also find them in the Vedas, in the Upanishads. Now, these stories have a value of their own. Having said that, the Hindu philosophical writers or Hindu literary writers, they had never given down the morals of this story in any format. So the stories are told, but you are not told what you are supposed to learn from that. That gives the consumers of these stories complete liberty to interpret the stories just as they're told. So what happened was, as time progressed, every generation, every era has its own politics. Every era looked at things from the prism of those political elements. And the stories got told and retold from that perspective. So there were times when we went very regressive. So a lot of stories were told to us in a way that these gods and goddesses made extreme sacrifices, and that sacrifice is the crux of femininity. That sacrifice makes a woman a true woman. That was one era. There was also another era which is very recent, when a few people coined a term called superwoman. So, what is a superwoman? A superwoman is someone who does everything, doesn't give anybody a chance to complain, does everything just like that, extremely efficient, working at office, working at home, everything in order. So, nobody else has anything else to do. So, all the responsibility, duty is on the woman. And we loved the term superwoman. We tried to be superwoman. We jumped up at the concept of superwoman. We all felt within us a need to be a superwoman. And it was only after a few years, when we were exhausted, we realized we have messed up this term called superwoman. There's nothing called a superwoman. So going back to the ancient concept, which is about the different ways these stories were told. When I was told the story of Ahalya as a child, I was told that Ahalya, something wrong happened with Ahalya. There were two schools of thought. One said that Ahalya didn't know that Indra had come to him in disguise of Gotham. She thought that it was Gotham and she went for it. Another school said that Ahalya was well aware that it was not Gotham, it was someone else in the disguise of Gotham, but she went for it. In either case, Ahalya was punished. She was punished because of what happened with her, not necessarily because of her contribution to the entire scheme of events. When I grow up, I reach an age where we are constantly traveling through different contexts of feminism, and we are trying to constantly understand, who am I? And in my understanding of who am I, when I look back at this story, which today a lot of feminists say that Hindu philosophical texts are very regressive. And when I look back at the same texts, I find that the retellings or the Hindu philosophical texts were not regressive. They were extremely progressive. They were progressive enough to judge a woman by her mind and not by her body, and call 5 women who have multiple partners virgins, because they were not to be touched or not to be swayed or not to be moved from their resolutions so easily. What can be more progressive than that? This is something that today we are debating in our feminism discourse. So when I look at that, what I figured was that Hindu philosophical texts are not regressive. What is regressive was the politics of our yesteryears and the way these stories had been told to us. So if you see, there was a time when a few parts of India, and I come from the East, so I can tell you specifically about the Eastern India, where sati as a practice became very strong. And what happened in sati? If the husband died, you throw the woman in the same fire and she is burnt alive. Now, we had released Ahalya in August, and now I am working on Kunti. While writing Kunti, I figured that Madri, who is Pandu's wife, was one of those who went to the same pyre, or she said that she gave herself to sati. She became a sati. That was the word, that she became a sati after Pandu's death. When I look at this story and when I read this story, I figure that nowhere in the epics had it been said that Madri had been thrown into fire and forced to death. It was just said that Madri became Sati. That gives me a reason to understand that probably Madri ceased to exist. She loved Pandu, Pandu loved her. Pandu and Kunti were not in a typically romantic relationship. There was a relationship of trust. With Madri, there was a typical love relationship. So after the death of Pandu, probably Madri ceased to exist in her original format. So even if she existed after Pandu's death, she existed in a way that her presence didn't register to anybody. And when your presence doesn't register, it is equivalent to death. So you have the liberty to look at these kind of stories from this kind of a vast platform. Nobody has stopped you to do that. Once again, our scriptures are not telling us what to learn, or they are not telling us anything regressive. Depending upon the politics of a particular era, the retelling has been done in a particular way to tell women that they must be, their existence is dependent on men, one, and two, their dependence is bound to men to serve them, look at their happiness, and exist thereafter. The philosophical texts, they were told us that. So coming to the topic, which is culturally Hindu or politically Hindu. So if I try to understand culture, I understand that culture is something that people enjoy. Culture is something that is subject to evolution, which is subject to change. And things change as situations or circumstances change. For example, this year, Maharashtra didn't observe a Ganpati Puja. Calcutta didn't observe a Durga Puja. And there are so many such evidences where we let go of our religious festivals or cultural festivals, as I would like to put it, simply because such was the situation in a pandemic. It was not advisable that people get together and celebrate it in a particular way. So we let go. Culture allowed us to do that. Culture allowed us to be logical. Culture allowed us to be flexible. On the other hand, politics is some kind of intellectual stimulation which forces you to decide what is right, what is wrong, and take one side. So individually, there is individual politics and there is social politics. Individual politics is where you are deciding what is right for yourself and what is not right for yourself. Such politics existed always. Social politics is something where you are supposed to decide what is right not only for yourself, but what is right for a complete society as a whole. So that particular politics, the social politics, was restricted previously to those who were the shareholders. In the ancient lands, it was the kings and the queens, and as society progressed, we had distinctions and designations like zamindars, and nawabs and nizams, and as you grow forward, you have the prime minister, the president, the chief minister. Different designations at par try to decide the social politics. Now, given the advent of social media, where every voice is equally robust, powerful, and the numbers on your social media decide whether you are more powerful than Modi or you are less powerful than Modi, everybody has fixed their own weight of their words. And so now everybody tries to tell you what is right for the society as a whole, what is right for the civilization as a whole. So we have become more brazen, more robust in telling the world what is right not only for ourselves, but what is right for the society. Some people say we should, some people say you should. Hardly anybody says I should. So, given that we have traveled till here, cultural and political once happened to be two very separate schools of thought. And now there is a slow mixing of uh, these two constructs, if I may say so. Now, let us look at the icons. With reference to my work, I can tell you that Ahalya, if anybody has read Ahalya or plans to read Ahalya, you would understand that Ahalya is an icon of cultural feminism. She is trying to correct things in her life in a way that whatever comes her way. So if you will find Ahalya to be one person who heals very fast by herself. That is the way I have defined Ahalya, not that it is very different from Ahalya's basic framework story in the original. So Ahalya is one of those women who very naturally heals. What does that mean? That means she doesn't attach to the pains of her life for too long. She lets go of the pain. Probably she forgives. If she doesn't forgive, she forgets. But she lets go. The more you let go of your pains, the happier you are. So Ahalya is that kind of a person. Whatever is missing in her life, whatever she feels is a void in her life, she tries to fill up the void with whatever is available instead of lamenting over whatever is not. Kunti, on the contrary, is a political icon, icon of political Hinduism. Why so? Because Kunti is that person. She is from a kingly household. She's a Kshatriya. So she is extremely ambitious. She is trying to get something. She is trying to win over something. She has her eyes on something. And if there's anything that comes on her way in achieving those goals, she is willing to resort to any kind of brutality to get that. That is politics. That is a political iconism. If you go back to, again, if we do that comparative analysis, which I am doing now because I'm already done with writing Kunti. That's why I have a little bit of clarity. In Ahalya, there is one space, one chapter where Ahalya's learning happens through whatever Gautam is teaching to his disciples. So Gautam, the sage, is teaching geography, how different countries, different kingdoms have geographical borders. And what Ahalya learns is everything infinite must be put man-made boundaries in order to understand or distinguish between races, between people, between ownership. That is what Ahalya learns. What Gautam tried to teach was more earthly. What Ahalya learned was something that is more philosophical. Similarly, now, not similarly, of course, when you look at Kunti, one of the things that I can very specifically tell you is something that often disturbed me about Kunti is that why did she leave Karna in the water? Or as a mother, how could she do that? That particular, when I actually started working on her, and when I actually entered this character called Kunti, I figured that we are probably thinking of Kunti from our perspective, given the kind of things that we have grown up learning, that is something that we can never do. We think of a child, we think of life that has come to our hands. But if you look at Kunti's, I don't know why this kind of an interpretation nobody had ever come out with, because I truly believe that someone should have. Kunti had let Karna, she had put Karna in a basket and let her flow on the Ganges, right? Now, Kunti got that son from Surya, right? Surya is the god of knowledge, and he observes everything, everything. Surya observes the three facets of time, past, present, and future. Surya observes everything. So Kunti didn't necessarily, she didn't own Karna, but she didn't discard Karna, or she didn't leave Karna to die. All that she had done was, she had left the child to the father's care. Because Surya is observing, no? He is observing everything. There are a million such examples in the Ramayana and Mahabharata, where the man has left the child with the woman and gone for his goals, whatever be them. There are many sages, there are many kings. In history, we have seen Ashoka doing that. There are many sages, there are many kings in history and mythology who has done that, who has left their child to their mother's care and gone for their own goals, gone for their own missions. Kunti did the same, but got questioned. That is, she is a typical political icon of Hinduism. Let me give you another example. This is very specific to me as a writer, not of Kunti as a character. So when I was writing Kunti, there was one moment where I had to, where I had written, I was rereading that, I had written that since Kunti is blessed by Surya, when you are blessed by Surya, you are blessed by knowledge. And when you are not blessed by knowledge, you are naturally privy, or you get the power to look at a lot of things, both from your past as well as your future, along with your hold on the present. So Kunti gets glimpses from the future. And one of the glimpses that she got was Dronacharya instructing Arjun to throw the arrow which will pierce the bird's eye. So initially when I had written it, I had written that she is an ambitious person. She wants her child to be the best of all. And so she wants the child to pierce the bird's eye. But when the arrow leaves, she closes her eyes. And that was while rereading it, it just came to me that why should Kunti close her eyes? She is a Kshatriya woman. She is a Yadava. She has seen so many brutality all her life. She is used to wars. She has seen people practicing warfare. She has seen people die. So why would she be touched by a mere bird dying? So I actually changed it to the fact that she is an ambitious woman. She wants her son to be the best on earth, the best archer on earth. So instead of closing her eyes, I changed it to Kunti waited for that arrow to leave Arjuna's bow and pierce the bird across, and it fell from the tree. This brings me back to the main topic, cultural Hinduism and political Hinduism. This is where we all stand. This is where we all are trying to figure which part of Hinduism do I belong to? This example that I gave you is actually the journey that we all are going through. Because politics and culture, we have grown up in culture, we have grown up in politics, and we are touched by both aspects of it. So given that, each and every character that we are have evolved from certain circumstantial aspects. We have seen certain things around us, and we have grown with accepting those as normal. If you see or if you talk to a person whose father and mother are uh, thieves, they will know that theft is the best thing to do, right? They would agree that theft is worship, because that is what is right in that family. So each and every person is trying to understand the right filtered within the circumstances, within the situations that they go through. And when we come back to that very first question, who am I? This particular question has again got filtered through that cultural and political iconism of legendary feminine characters of Indian mythology, simply because, number one, women have been the genesis. I mean, of course, men have had their contributions in childbirth, but women have held a child within their bodies. So a lot of things that take birth forward, a large part of it is being, guided by women. So at every era, the way that era has treated its women and explained its women and the women's stories of that era is actually telling you how that particular civilization of that era has progressed. You will see that in cinema, you will see that in literature, you will see that in art. There will be films, there will be theater, there will be art, architecture, symbolism, literature. In all of these, actually, the progress of the civilization is actually telling you what is the woman's story. So pick up any book and you will find that your judgment of that book or your judgment of that era is getting shaped by the way the woman in that particular book, in that cinema, in that theater, in that art, in that culture has been shaped. And that is where this iconography becomes so important. When it comes to Indian mythology, we have immense number of feminine legends, which has been spoken about very less. They have been spoken about very less because they are dangerous if spoken about too much. You have one Chitrangada, who is the warrior princess from Manipur. I hear a lot of people talking about the Northeast. The Northeasterns complain that they don't get the right kind of attitude from the rest of India. We forget that one of our warrior princes who had challenged none other than Arjuna, Arjun, who happens to be the biggest warrior, the hero of Indian mythological history. And Chitrangada was the one to challenge Arjuna and also defeat him. She was one of the first icons from Indian mythology who dismissed the construct of looks vis-a-vis talent. Arjun, initially, the story of Chitrangada goes like she was the princess of Manipur who was dismissed because she was very manly. She was tomboyish. She was dismissed by Arjun. He didn't want to marry her because of her masculinity. And Chitrangada transformed herself into a feminine and proved to him that it is the masculine part of her character that will be of use to him. The feminine beauty that he is looking for is only a trophy that will be of no use to him once he has married and probably indulged in her for a few days, which showed that she was the first one within the epics to prove to him hands-on that the talent is the looks are temporary, the talent is permanent. That brings me to another construct called Purusha and Prakriti, with which I will probably end this monologue. Purusha and Prakriti are again two constructs of Indian philosophical writings. Purusha means the masculine aspects of being, which is aggressive, which is very robust, which is temporary. And Prakriti is the nature. Prakriti is nature when you do a direct translation. But Prakriti is that aspect of nature which is tender, which is lasting, and which looks at the long-term goals of everything. Purusha looks at the short-term goals of everything. You are angry, you shout short-term. You are angry, you change you make the person who did something wrong to you to change, or you change the entire social structure, Prakriti. Now, does that mean every person, every male is a Purusha and every female is a Prakriti? No, it doesn't. These are philosophical constructs. If you look at people like Shah Rukh Khan, he has a very, very strong feminine side, the side of Prakriti. If you look at people like Swara Bhaskar or Kangana Ranaut, they have a very strong Purusha side, which is the masculinity. Once again, Purusha, the philosophical construct, means something which is too aggressive, over-aggressive, and short-lived. Prakriti is tender and long-term. It is the politics of the eras that has reduced Purusha and Prakriti, the masculinity and femininity, into a mere gender construct. Ideally, it was a philosophical construct, and it meant that every human being is a combination of Purusha and Prakriti. And that is how the chromosomes also align themselves in our birth process. So coming back to the very first question that we started with, who am I? That question emerges from that very merger of different cultural and mythological iconism. For every Ahalya, there will always be a Kunti. It is ideally very difficult for anybody to be 100% Ahalya. It is difficult for anybody to be 100% Kunti. How much in me is Ahalya and how much in me is Kunti, there is probably a percentage ratio. And that percentage defines my political culture, political Hinduism, and also my cultural Hinduism. Who is the political Hindu and who is the cultural Hindu? Definitely not something that I would try to lay my ideas on, because that is a bias. That is something that I leave to the audience. Thank you so much for listening me out.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. Well, I was so much into it. You have brought up very interesting points actually regarding femininity, the idea of the feminine in the larger framework of Hinduism as a culture. And in fact, I was just wondering, Koral, you have already touched upon that point, but why do you mentioned that we are made to aspire to become super women now in the present days, and we get somehow trapped, I would say, in this aspiration until and unless we get tired and find it at times meaningless. But how do you feel that the stories of the Panchakanya that you have already started working on should be told anew to you should say help. I would use the word help. Help is a very utilitarian word still. How would it help to reshape, restructure the ideals of a so-called aspiring superwoman? would you think, in today's time?
You know, what I have felt is that till now we have discussed very broadly the icons, some of the icons, but mostly uh, when we go back to the epics, you are influenced or inspired by the masculine legends. And I don't in any way belittle them. I am not even qualified to do that. I don't have the courage to do that. They are huge. But when you look at the feminine legends, they have massive stories to say. Just like I just named Chitrangada, and there are many more. We talk about a few. We talk about Draupadi, we talk about Sita, but we haven't understood or taken enough pain to understand what was happening exactly. So, if you look at it, you were asking me about uh, how to deconstruct and reconstruct superwomen. Uh, if you look at this story, this is my favorite actually, Chitrangada. Uh, I would probably consider a Chitrangada a superwoman of her times or of her brief narrative simply because she stuck to that little space that she had, and her story doesn't spill into more of into anything more than what she had to offer, right? So superwoman probably is that you identify a few things that you are good at and stick to that instead of trying to prove that you are good at everything and you should be good at everything, and if you are not good at everything, then the society has a reason to tell you that you are not good at everything. Rather, you make your statement as a superwoman from acceptance of yourself. And this I say very strongly because as much as I shout from rooftops about the qualities that I have, I am still very much burdened with my bad hair day. I'm burdened with the fact that I have something going on and I'm not getting the right shade of my lipstick. And the fact that I'm graying, you know? So, and this is true. When I figured my first strand of gray hair, I sulked for 2 days. And now I am more accepting towards my gray hairs because I'm lazy. It's not that I have accepted them because I'm at ease with them. It's just that I've stopped looking into the mirror. That na chick chick, na jig jig, nikalo. So, you know,
This is
I will
amazing.
consider myself a superwoman the day these things don't matter to me. And what matters to me is the fact that I am working on Panch Kanya, and that is one hell of a work that I am doing, and I should be happy with that. That day I'll say that I am a superwoman.
This is lovely. This is lovely. Actually, in fact, I was thinking of this. There are myths that, in fact, in Valmiki Ramayana, I think we see that Ahalya is not born of a woman. She was created by Brahma, um, and she was born out of water, and she was created to compete the most beautiful of all women, Urvashi, and this as you define the feminine identity from your own perspective, I think this is also a very important politically relevant thing that we in feminine politics, I would say, in the politics of understanding a woman's stand, that you create another woman to become more beautiful than the other, and you make them, you know, strive and struggle. And in fact, I see that there are other myths regarding Ahalya's birth, that in some alternative Ramayanas where they say that she was born out of ashes. So what was your do you deal with this part in your book of her birth,
Yes.
or how do you present?
I didn't work on the Urvashi part, but I definitely did work on Ahalya's birth,
Mhm.
which was totally strategized from Brahma. And my work is most of the stuff that I do has a very strong art aspect because I'm very much consumed by all forms of art. So in the book, initially, when Brahma is creating Ahalya, that is where you see Brahma as a sculptor who is inch by inch, putting ingredients together, the best of the ingredients, and creating Ahalya. Having said that, uh, he howsoever he creates, he is a father, right? So in his creation of Ahalya, there is a lot of fatherly instincts uh, that goes into the creation of Ahalya, because your father wants you to be someone who grows up and follows the path from where he stopped, right? Your father wants to be you to be perfect, and your mother finds that perfection in you. These are the very different parental instincts, that the father wants you to be perfect, the mother uh, finds perfection in you. Given that, the particular birthing of Ahalya in my Ahalya uh, gets into that kind of a discourse where Brahma has created her with the ambition that he is an artist and his creation is the best in the world, uh, with certain elements which are his magic. That is the magic of an artist. But then the psychology of a child is such that in the absence of a mother, that child would look for the mother. If that mother is not available, that child will still look for the mother in different other aspects or elements that are available to her. So Ahalya searches for her mother in various elements of nature, and those elements of nature actually uh, come towards uh, training her, empowering her, and giving her an insight into various aspects of life, which actually no human or celestial mother probably would have provided.
Yes, that is lovely. Actually, your the way you look at Brahma's approach to her, and this is I really you take a very caring approach from Brahma's end, I would say, which is
No, actually,
interesting.
in fact, it's just the ulta. It's more of a arrogant approach.
No, I don't say towards her. I would
Okay.
say. I would say that, as you are differentiating between um, the cultural aspect, the political aspect of the presence of these women, the women that you are identifying as mythologically important, relevant. Um, this is one thing, the way we are also portraying men, masculine character, masculinity, uh, in our tradition, our culture. Just in the last session, Ushaji mentioned it's not that men can't cry. We all need to cry, but these are the things we inject in the masculine as well. And I see, Koral, I'm sure you must have noticed it. Now there is a trend of exploring mythology in Hindu mythology in literature. So, in fact, I've noticed that Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, she has, she commented on your book. She loved your work. She herself indulges much into exploring mythology. We have Devat Patnaik. What do you feel? You yourself, you are working in an elaborate project. You have planned a very elaborate project for yourself. What do you feel? Why is it being explored by so many people at the same time? It's not. I'm sure people have over the ages tried to look back at mythology from their own perspectives, but now we see more work in Indian English based on mythological characters are coming up. Of course, the takes are different, and especially the women are being explored. Especially, Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, she explores Draupadi's character wonderfully. What do you feel? Of course, it is first of all, it is your choice, your experience. But apart from that, how you relate to the should I call it a trend or not? But a tendency, I would say. So, how do you relate to it?
First, let me just come to one point that you had briefly mentioned, that women can't cry. Just one aspect that I can tell you as a quote from the originals of Mahabharata is that when Arjun was piercing Bhishma, he was crying. So men don't cry is completely a construct of the bygone eras where we defined macho in a particular way, macho or macho, however it is pronounced. I don't even pronounce it. But it is a construct of the times. Men do cry, Arjuna cried. Coming to your question, as I said that these Hindu philosophical texts, and I very consciously call them philosophical texts because Hindu religion is very different from Hindu philosophy. Religion is today, philosophy is eternal, and the texts, the literature that we have in Hinduism is philosophy, not religion. Religion tells you what to do. They specifies rituals for you. The philosophy doesn't. These scriptures hasn't. So these philosophical texts actually they have told the stories, but they haven't told the morals. They haven't told us that this is what you are supposed to learn. So look at Ekalavya's story, that his finger had to be chopped off. So you can look at this story from Ekalavya's side, you can look at this story from Dronacharya's side, and you can look at this story from Arjuna's side. And the stories would probably be three different stories. And such is it with everybody, each and every character. It could be a minuscule character, it could be a dominating character. These stories have the space of being retold because these are all, sparks of fire. And that fire has been lightened and they have remained as a spark. And this is one era when a lot of writers are kindling that spark into a huge fire. That is because that possibility rests. There are too many questions in these. Just like one question that I had raised, that why did Kunti let Karna flow on river? That was one question that everybody wanted to know, right? There are many such questions that are constantly haunting us. Just few days ago, I had written a Facebook post on Abhimanyu. It was my son, my 8-year-old son had asked me that, how could they kill Abhimanyu? Or how could they let Abhimanyu be killed? And the post that I had written didn't call Abhimanyu foolish, but it had definitely pointed out his foolishness with proper choice of words. Definitely not by using the word. Abhimanyu was very young, and he died very young, which naturally raises sympathy. But you have to also understand, if you want to call Abhimanyu a great warrior, then you cannot look at his age, right? If he is a great warrior, then he is a great warrior. And you treat him like a warrior. You don't treat him as a child any longer. And if you treat him as a warrior, then you figure that one, he had acquired half knowledge. Half knowledge is harmful. Two, his father and his uncle Krishna were terribly against any kind of half knowledge. He knew that he had acquired half knowledge and he still jumped into it. He shouldn't have. He should have waited to acquire it full before he went for it. Third, he knew that he knew something which others didn't. So he should have trained more. His leadership failed. And fourth, he had befriended all those people who didn't know how to break a chakravyuh. he was in the wrong company. He didn't keep the right friends. His friends and family definitely were well-wishers, but not every time your well-wisher is in a position to help you out. You have to build your right network. Now, culturally, we are not in a situation, or we have always sympathized with Abhimanyu. So the moment you say that Abhimanyu made some foolish decisions, it hurts. And you are in a space of discomfort immediately. And it moves you on your seat. So there were a lot of people who were asking, who DM'd, who protested that how can I call? I didn't call Abhimanyu foolish. I just pointed out his mistakes. But it unsettled a lot of people, you know. Now, these are some questions that the mythology has kept space. We haven't ever questioned those. We were not allowed to question those because we were too austere. We were too conservative. And this is one such era where on one hand, people say that we are growing very, very rigorous and we are not supposed to behave in a particular way. It is a Hindutva and all that. Yes, there is a sector which is complete mad. But then this is also that era which allows us to question, which allows us to seek answers. And again, coming back to Kunti, Kunti was the one who questioned, because in the way I have perceived Kunti, I have seen her as a mathematical scholar, because the boon that Durvasa had given her, which was the one that allowed her to call upon gods, right? You cannot call upon gods. I mean, a mantra that actually allows you to call upon gods. My understanding of that is that it could be an astronomical equation, which is thoroughly mathematics based, which allows her to calculate the gravitational pull of the stars. And all these stars, all the natural elements are gods and goddesses as per Hindu philosophical texts. So she was empowered with such mathematical prowess that she knew when to utter that, utter or practice that mathematical genius, which when the gravitational elements are aligned and two stars would come very close to each other, that is when she gets very close to Surya, because Surya is already come close to Earth. So you have so much to, you know, interpret. What was Durvasa's boon that asked Kunti to, that allowed Kunti to call upon gods? What was that, you know? And then another question is that Kunti had that boon always with her. So what stopped her after Surya? What stopped her after she had had 5 children? She has gone through, her life has gone through immense number of ups and downs. She could have, Kauravas had 100 children. What stopped her from getting her 100 and creating a forge, all of which would be 20 times Pandavas? What stopped her from doing that? Nobody stopped her, right? There must be something, and there must be an answer to these questions. So there are n number of questions, you know, and these questions everybody is trying to investigate and try and find an answer. Whether those answers are digestible, whether those answers are acceptable or no, that depends upon the philosophy of the person who is writing it and the flexibility of the person who is reading it. But then these questions will never fade away. The more you write, the more your questions will come up. It's like reading the literature n number of times. You are a Bengali, you read Tagore 200 times and 200 questions will come to you. Each time you read, one more question. Same is it with all forms of literature. And here we are talking epics.
True. Actually, Preeti ma'am has dropped a question in the chat box. I'll read it out to you.
Sure.
So she's asking, even now we are allowed to question mythology. Are we allowed to question mythology? Is there a line between, and she also is asking that, is there a line between mythology and religion to you?
Yes, there is a second question first. There is a huge line between mythology and religion. definitely there is an overlap. But having said that, the line that divides mythology and religion is the treatment. That is very culturally deep and rooted, because when you are talking mythology, you have immense flexibility to do the interpretation and treat a particular character in a particular way. And when it comes to religion, there will be 1,000 priests surrounding you and telling you that सुबह 10 बजे घंटी बजानी है, सुबह 11 बजे आपको शंख बजानी है. You will be told how to worship. When it comes to mythology, you will not be told how to worship. You can worship the way you want to. I worship in the way I understand these characters, in the way I, as you say that, okay, work is worship, that is mythology. And those bells and shank is worship, that is religion for you. Coming to your first question, would you please repeat the first question?
Okay, she has asked, are we allowed to question mythology even now in the present time?
Yes, we are constantly questioning mythology. The reaction that you get in the questioning of mythology depends upon how you are questioning mythology. Because you have to understand, or we all have to understand, that these are very deep rooted and goes very, very deep down back. So today, if I get up and suddenly question or talk about something in a completely bratish way, it is like questioning our fathers and forefathers, not in a civilized way, but in a insulting way, So when you are insulting it, it will be taken as an insult. When you are questioning it, it will be taken as a question. The answer of a question is, when you have a question, you get an answer. When you insult, you get a reverse insult. So that is probably the only way I can answer this particular question. Let me know if you are satisfied, or should I elaborate? Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, okay. We all got engrossed in discussing mythology, and it's really, we can go on for long. But before we, wrap up our session, I would like to ask you on something else as well. So you do a wonderful thing. You have, you call it, you work on the literature laboratory, and you are engaging people through your project, Tell Me Your Stories. And so how do you do it? What do you do with it? What do you want to do with it? Because, there is, of course, better than I, that there is sort of societal understanding that literature is not a very practical thing to do. It's not everybody's cup of tea. Again, no one, many people are not interested because no utility is there. So and you are doing a very practical project about how you're connecting people through literature. So if you could enlighten us.
Yeah, so I run this website called tellmeyourstory.biz. And the idea of this particular site is that everybody, we are constantly, all of us, birthing so many stories in one lifetime. And we are not even aware of that. And I very, very strongly believe that if you are aware, or if you are made conscious of the stories of your own life, you will not have to look for motivation outside. The stories that you create are capable of inspiring you back. Because when you actually try to look back into your life and dig out all those stories that mattered in your life, or shaped your life, or touched upon your life and made something better out of it, you probably wouldn't have, uh, you probably, your mind will be far better taken care of. You will have less of mental mind oriented distractions or ailments. I do believe that. So it is very important for me to get people to think and value the stories of our own lives. And we take them very, very casually. We tend to forget. That's natural if we don't give importance to the little things that are happening, to the little characters that are appearing in our lives and going away, by touching our lives in a way that made a huge difference or a small difference. Nevertheless, it's a favorable difference. And then that character is just vanishing and we are not even in touch. It's not possible that we are in touch with everybody we meet. But those uh, beautiful little things can make our life much more beautiful than it otherwise is. And these stories are a very significant contributor in history, because today there are 10 news channels who will tell you whether you were happy or you were sad. So there are some, and these are all politically aligned, that certain news channels will tell you that, oh, you are leading a totally frustrated life, तुम्हारे life में कुछ अच्छा नहीं है. And there are some news channels who are telling you that everything is growing, everything is flourishing, everything is happening for the good. You are leading a happy life. Be happy. Shouldn't our own stories tell us how happy or how sad we are? They are more capable of telling us about that. And I look at these stories from that perspective, that aaj ke date pe, whatever is happening to you, to me, this particular session, the fact that we are smiling, something that happened in the session before this, whatever you and Ushaji may have shared. These are all small little stories that, if documented, becomes a significant contributor of history. How can we miss out on that, on those real contributions? Because aaj ke baad, 50 years from now, there will be some historian who will try to document, research and document this particular era. But that person naturally will come with his or her bias. Every historian is biased. There is political bias, there is country bias, there is gender bias, there is social bias, there are so many kinds of bias. But right now, you have a story, I have a story, Vivek has a story, Preeti has a story, each and every one of us have a story. And those stories actually collectively contribute to become a collective story of this era, this generation. So we are trying to figure out from different aspects what those stories are and whether those stories can be of some use, and how those stories can be put to good use. That is the kind of work that I am doing there, and we constantly keep having a lot of projects. As I said, that I will let you know when I need students for our projects, or if there are call for papers, I'll share with you. And I look forward to the kids of your institution to join us. And I'm sorry I said kids, but it's okay. You guys are much smaller.
Then we forget sometimes we need to call them kids, though they don't like it. They are young adults. So sure. But they would love to work with you. And please do let us know.
Certainly.
Yeah. And yes, Vivek.
Yes, we have a lot of compliments coming in from chat box. Like they were literally got engrossed and indulged in your talk. It was so nice to hear you. Before we take a question from the audience, I have a question that you covered many aspects around mythology, politics, and Hinduism. There are factors. There is one topic I wanted to know from you as a writer, your perspective as a writer. Director Nandita Das, while creating the film Manto, she got so attached with the character Manto Saab that she ended up writing letters to him. So, in your experience, does it often happen that creators get attached with the characters they are working on? Um, because for some reason, those characters are part of their creators. Also, is there any character of yours you are closely attached to and feel like it is you or your part?
Yes, very much, because that is the reason I said right in the beginning that once the book is published, I never go back to reading it, because it's like a child. And if you see that some part could have been written better, after that you will never be able to come out of that underconfidence, because you feel that ideas keep evolving, and as humans we keep learning. So when I go back and read something which I may have written 6 months before, and after that the publishing process has taken place, in these 6 months I have evolved, I have learned. So reading the book once again myself is something where I feel that, oh, I could have done this better. And the moment I feel that I could have done this better, I am doomed for life. So that is the reason I try to, when I am asked to accept, I do that, but then I never go to read the published book from top to bottom. Uh, you were asking about a particular character that I am attached to. Oh, yes. My third book is called Rasya, The Dance of Desire. That is a love triangle between Bharatanatyam dancers. And the character of Rajshekhar Subramanian, I took 3 years to write that book. And I think if I am allowed to say this very politically incorrect thing, I am in love with this person virtually. Thankfully, virtual is accepted right now. I'm in complete love with this person. I'm completely consumed by this person. And the weirdest thing is, this person doesn't exist in reality.
Right, right. So, ma'am, can we take a question from, do we have the time to take question from the chat box from audiences?
I think yes, we should at least one or two. Do you have time? I mentioned we have already passed.
We can
at least
go
one.
until
At
2
least
o'clock.
one.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So there is one question from a student named Anya. She says that even if we question mythology, where do we get the answers from? She asked that can she get an answer to, even if we question mythology, where do we get the answers from? Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Anya. A very interesting question. Now, in order to get your answers from mythology, number one, and the very important aspect of it, you have to read mythology in and out thoroughly, because each of us who are lovers of mythology have read various versions of mythology, various versions of the epics. Uh, the you will find a lot of people talking about mythology on social media without having read the mythology properly. The knowledge that they have of mythological characters or mythological episodes are actually restricted to what they may have heard or watching Ramayana and Mahabharata on TV, or probably they have read the comics of Ramayana and Mahabharata when they were in class 3. So kindly don't restrict yourself to that. Read the real versions of Ramayana and Mahabharata. They are available as translations. Let me tell you, Vivek Debroy has done that. He has translated from the original in English. You can go for that. Or there is direct translations of Ramayana and Mahabharata in almost every regional language of India and even outside India. So you can go for any. Having said that, when you read mythology too many times, a lot of times, you will find that you are discussing those questions that you have in your mind, and your mind will return your answers. If you want, anybody wants, you can try this and come back to me after a year. You will know that I have said the truth. Try it.
Right, right. That's wonderful. There's one more question from my batchmate Nitesh. He asked that isn't political Hinduism or politics in general also flexible, like the course of action can change with the kind of government ruling, kind of.
Would you just come again on that?
Isn't political Hinduism or politics in general also flexible? Like the course of action can change with the kind of government ruling.
Okay, see, it all depends upon who is the person who is taking the decision, who is the person in authority who is exercising power. So, If you can say, can it? Of course it can. The answer is always yes. Should it? Of course it should. Does it? Probably that is your question. Does it? Does it depends upon person to person. In Maharashtra, it's different, and in Punjab, it's different. In Delhi, it's different, and in Orissa, it's different. You have to understand that politicians are not machines, they are human beings, right? And each human being is a product of his time, one, a product of his circumstances, two, a product of his upbringing, three, and a product of his education, four. So these four things actually make that person a very complicated personality. All of us, we all are a product of these four. So we ourselves, all of us, are very complicated personalities anyway. Now, a politician who has gone to that space of power is not actually dealing with just one aspect. It is not that आज घर पे दूध खत्म हो गया है तो कहाँ से लाएंगे चाय बनाने के लिए. The problem is not as simple as that, right? The problem is far more complicated when it comes to politics. So when a person is actually dealing from a political chair, and he has to cater to not to one person, but to a society, because the problem could be one person's or a particular group's, but the legacy that it will leave will impact a particular society. So there is a very civilized, cultured way of handling this, where people actually think of the far-fetched, impact of each and every decision that is being taken from that chair. And there are also impulsive things that happen because everybody is a human being end of the day. So once again, should it happen? Yes. Can it happen? Yes. Does it happen? Depends.
That is very interesting, actually. Yes. Does it happen? Yes, Vivek, it was an amazing session, actually, Koral. I have so much to ask, and I'm sure the students have many more questions. We would love to have you on campus, actually, for another session on literature. We can and mythology. Yes. By the way, what are the other three names in your Sati series? Before we round off,
it's Ahalya, Kunti, Draupadi, Mandodri, Tara. Ahalya has already released. Kunti will come out sometime in May, and Draupadi, Mandodari, Tara is still under construction.
Oh, okay, pretty ma'am. Yes.
I'm so sorry, Koral, Mandodri. Oh my God, like I think not talked about much. Always known as only Ravan's wife, but Koral, 2 minutes. What is it about Mandodri that you are working on? And if there's anything, like you summed up Ahalya, I mean, Suchandra, I think you and me can just go on with Koral,
Yes. Absolutely.
But sorry, because Mandodari, I personally felt is someone not celebrated in the popular narrative. If you look at the tribal versions of the Ramayana, her story, in Gujarat also there are tribes that worship Mandodari, with a different name. So Koral wanted to know your take. Sorry, I just when you said Mandodari, I'm like, I just want.
As you mentioned Mandodari, actually I remember a Bengali line of a poem. Mandodari Bhagyavati tai peche emon poti. So she is very lucky to get such a man in her life. I just remember this because that is how we get as our youngsters, they get introduced to characters. It stuck me this way, Mandodari.
The poem that you said in the Bengali one, that is actually, it comes from, we Bengalis have one version of Ramayana which says that we talk about Ravaner Cheetah, or the cheetah of Ravan, which never extinguished. So since the pyre of Ravan never extinguished, Mandodari's sindoor was never off. So she was a forever married thing. So drawing from that, since you have spoken about that, if I come to Preeti's question, I haven't even started working on Mandodari, but drawing from the simple point that Suchandra raised, if you see that Mandodari was definitely the empress of Ravana's Lanka, and since Ravana's pyre was never extinguished, he was so huge. And this huge, again, is not just the measurement of his body, it was the measurement of his learnings and his achievements. Ravana was a huge achiever. He was a very, very spiritual person. So his achievements and his learning were so huge that it was not to be extinguished. Such fire was not to be extinguished in the lifetime of one era. And so Ravana's fire never extinguished, and Mandodari never became a widow. Mandodari never became a widow, and she never had to step down from being the Empress of Lanka. Mandodari never stepped down from being the Empress of Lanka. She has been the perennial inspiration of humanity and motherhood and femininity in that part of the world. And in the south and in the east, it is said that women are very, very dominating. They are very dominating on their men. And one of those might just come from there, that in spite of the fact that, I mean, she basically, this means that she didn't restrict, her life didn't restrict to either being Ravana's wife, because even when she was Ravana's wife and Ravana was taking all kinds of wrong decisions, Mandodari never shifted from her righteousness. She was always in place. And even after he died, Mandodari, when Ravana was alive, Mandodari didn't shift. When Ravana died, Mandodari could not be shifted. So that makes her huge, I guess. I have not even started writing this. This is the only thing that I can offer.
We should have another session with you. A long one. I think I was saying a long one. Yes, a never-ending one, actually.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Actually, thank you for coming. It was lovely. It was amazing. We all, as our students are also, pouring texts in the chat box. They loved you, and yes, we would love to have with us for another session as our campus reopens. Maybe you can come to our campus. And yes, we would love our students to read you before the next session, and maybe they can go into, they'll be able to ask you more questions because they are very inspired as it seems. So thank you so much, Koral. Thank you very much for joining us for this discussion today.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Huge thanks to Pan Macmillan Publishers, to you, and we definitely we are looking forward to read Ahalya.
Thank you so much. I would definitely look forward to all your feedback once you read the book. I'm there on all kinds of social media platforms. I mean, I'm there on 4 social media platforms, and that is my knowledge of social media. So I say I'm there on all kinds of social media. So please do reach out and pass me your feedback. I would love to receive those.
Koral, we're also ordering copies for our library. So we're opening up, I don't know, I think soon, but people, you can grab your copies also from the library. But it's better to have your own copy, I feel. I mean, mythology has to have your own little space. You can't depend on us only. So yeah. Seriously.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you everyone present here in the session for being with us, participating, and thank you, Vivek, for hosting us.
Thanks a lot to all of you. It was great pleasure being there with you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you too, ma'am. It was like a whole new perspective. Like, I'm a bookworm and it just touched my heart right now. I will definitely read all of your books.
Thank you so much. I look forward.
Koral, there are a few more students who want to say something. We don't want to stop them. Kanishk, go ahead. Speak. Kanishk?
You're not audible, Kanishk.
Audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are audible now.
Yeah. So just before we end this session or meeting, I really want to thank you because till date I was not into reading, but then after listening to you, I feel that I might read some mythological books, and it will start from your book only. So I think it will be a change, a great revolution in me myself, that I will start reading something in this period. And thank you so much, ma'am, for guiding, and thank you so much for the knowledge which you shared over here. I'm blessed to be the part of this session.
Thank you so much, Kanesh. It's very nice for me to hear that whatever little I say, it could inspire you to pick up book. And I hope that once you pick up one book, your habit changes forever and you never stop reading.
But Koral, don't let this come as a culture shock, because you being a bong, I mean, reading is something very common in bong genes. Huh? Suddenly Gujarat से कोई बोलता है कि मैं पढ़ता ही नहीं हूँ. I understand that the author will be like, पढ़ते क्या हो फिर तुम?
No, there are, we authors go through different kinds of, we meet different kinds of people. So there was one such, I was working somewhere, I was consulting. And of course, in an office, you don't expect everybody to read. So there was one of this chap who comes up to me and says that, I heard that you write books. I was like, yes, apologetically, yes. I'm so sorry, I write books. So he said that, what do you write? So I said, would you like to pick up one and read? He said, अरे नहीं कौन पढ़ेगा बता ना क्या लिखती है. So if you want me to do a stand-up comedy session, I'm there for you for that as well.
Yeah, note to self. Yeah, Koral, I'll connect with you later on that. Koral के husband को बुलाना
Should
है,
you
Koral
introduce?
को, है ना? तो Koral के husband को बुलाना है, Koral को
Absolutely.
अलग session के लिए बुलाना है.
Surely,
Thank
Preeti
you.
herself is a stand-up comedian, and you must watch her shows, and it would be
No,
great
no,
to
I
have
am
you
not a
both
stand-up
together.
comedian at all, but you were talking about
I
someone?
know. Our additional director.
I am
She's
professionally.
the worst time.
We will bond, and I will definitely Google you out from that perspective.
Oh, from that perspective, I love that.
And we would love to see you both together
Yeah,
on the
because
same
I have
stage.
also been in academics in various capacities, and I know that in academics you are expected to always have a very sulky face and not laugh, because otherwise, if you are laughing too much, then you are not an academic. I mean, come on, how are you laughing? Haven't you done your PhD then?
Correct.
Okay. So yes. Any more feedbacks? Yuvraj wants to say something. I can see Yuvraj all over the screen.
UV, तुम्हें कुछ कहना है? UV is like.
Nah, I am actually seeing her as a new member of Mahila Manch.
UV, other than that, guys, Param, do you want to say something? Okay, Param is a non-verbal guy.
Actually, it was a great session, Loved it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks all. We really loved your session, Koral.
Me too. Loved being with you, and during the pandemic times, if I get to laugh, nothing like it. Thank you so much for being co-laughers.
No, we will invite you on campus once life opens up to whatever, we would love to do workshops on writing, on storytelling, actually, how you spin stories around.
Please, we need that. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, all of them would look forward to it. No, done. Bhakti, we'll just wait for things to fall a little in place.
Normalize out a little bit.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Yes.
But thank you so much. And Suchandra, Vivek, thank you too. And tech support.
Yes.
Thank you so much, and keep in touch. I will take your leave because I will have another session in about 2 hours. So
oh God, wow.
Oh, wow. Best wishes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.